Join us on a whimsical journey through the hidden tales and mysterious lives of the lesser-known inhabitants of the Magic the Gathering universe. In our enchanting podcast, we'll delve deep into the realms of imagination, uncovering secrets and spinning fantastical yarns that will leave you spellbound. So grab your soul rings, buckle up, and get ready for an adventure unlike any other. Welcome to the Multiverse Memoirs. In the celestial plane of Serra's realm, where beings of pure light dueled the ever-encroaching darkness, resided Selenia, an angel whose wings shimmered with a brilliance that rivaled 1,000 suns. Unlike her brethren, unwavering in their devotion to radiant purity, Selenia possessed a spark that flickered dangerously close to individuality, a quality both alluring and suspecting in the rigid hierarchy of the heavens. Her fate took a cruel turn on the blood-soaked battlefields of Dominaria, where the Phyrexians, a nightmarish fusion of flesh and metal, waged a relentless war. Captured in the throes of combat, Selenia was subjected to a horrifying transformation. Phyrexian artifice, cold and insidious, twisted her angelic form, weaving shadows into her once pristine essence. No longer an instrument of divine light, Selenia became a pawn in a twisted game, tasked with overseeing a lonely nobleman named Crovax of Urborg. Crovax, an introspective soul burdened by the weight of his lineage, found solace in the presence of his ethereal guardian. To him, Selenia was a beacon in the suffocating darkness of his ancestral home, a silent confidant who offered a reprieve from the crushing weight of expectation. As days bled into weeks, Crovax's affection for his celestial protector blossomed into a love as pure and desperate as the Phyrexian taint that pulsed within Selenia. But Selenia, bound by her twisted form and the Phyrexian leash that tugged at her core, could not reciprocate. Her heart, though perhaps yearning for a connection beyond her servitude, remained a prisoner within the cage of her altered form. This unrequited love became a festering wound in Crovax's soul, a suffocating rejection that gnawed at the edges of his sanity. In a desperate bid for control, Crovax stole the artifact that held Selenia tethered. This act of rebellion, fueled by a love both tender and obsessive, had unforeseen consequences. The Phyrexian demons Morinfan and Gallowbraid, freed from their angelic jailer, descended upon Crovax's family with nightmarish fury. The once proud household, defenseless without their celestial guardian, was plunged into an abyss of blood and despair. Meanwhile, Crovax, his heart a ragged mess, found himself aboard the Weatherlight, a ragtag band of heroes sailing the plains. News of his family's demise reached him like a hammer blow, shattering the fragile hope that had kept him from succumbing to despair. The stolen artifact, a constant reminder of his failed love and the source of his family's doom, became a twisted talisman, a focus for his burgeoning rage. When the Weatherlight encountered Selenia, now a fierce warrior in the Phyrexian ranks, the battlefield became a crucible of conflicting emotions. Selenia, her once benevolent gaze replaced by a cold, predatory glint, unleashed her considerable skill upon the heroes. The sight of his beloved fighting against him, her celestial form a grotesque parody of its former glory, was too much for Crovax to bear. His mind, already teetering on the edge, fractured completely. Grief, rage, and a sliver of twisted affection coalesced into a madness that left him a broken shell. The battle raged, a chaotic dance of steel and magic. Rofellos, a Weatherlight hero and a beacon of hope, fell before Selenia's onslaught, his death a tragic counterpoint to the love story gone horribly wrong. Crovax, consumed by a maelstrom of emotions, summoned Selenia with a desperate plea. As she materialized before him, the embodiment of everything he both cherished and reviled, Crovax snapped. In a moment of horrifying clarity, he destroyed the artifact that bound Selenia, severing the Phyrexian leash and shattering the last vestiges of her control. Freed from her servitude, Selenia took flight, soaring away from the man whose love had become a curse, her destination, Wrath, a plane shrouded in Phyrexian dominion, where she would become a weapon pointed at the heart of her enemies. Years bled into decades. Crovax, a shell of his former self, became consumed by a singular purpose, to find Selenia and end her existence. His once noble features became twisted with an all-consuming hatred, a chilling testament to the love that had curdled into a horrifying obsession. Their paths finally crossed once more in the monolithic stronghold, a Phyrexian monument to domination. The battle was a brutal ballet of vengeance and sorrow. Selenia, her celestial form a grotesque mockery of its former beauty, clashed with the heroes of the Weatherlight. In the heat of the fight, she critically wounded Miri, a young woman who embodied the hope and resilience Crovax had so desperately lost. Crovax, driven to the edge by a cocktail of rage and despair, launched himself at Selenia. His attack was fueled not by hatred, but by a twisted yearning for a release, a final act that might somehow mend the fractured pieces of his soul. Selenia, her angelic visage etched with a flicker of sorrow, did not resist. Tears streamed down her face, each one a searing indictment of the cruel fate that had twisted their destinies. As Crovax's weapon found its mark, plunging deep into her Phyrexian tainted flesh, a horrifying transformation began. Crovax, forever marked by his transgression, did not share Selenia's swift demise. Instead, a dark energy, a malevolent echo of Phyrexian corruption, coursed through his veins. The lifeblood drained from his face, replaced by a sickly pallor. Agony ripped through him, a fitting counterpoint to the emotional torment that had consumed him for years. When the tremors finally subsided, Crovax was no longer the man he once was. He had been reborn, a creature of the night, forever bound to the darkness he had sought to destroy. The curse, a cruel twist woven by the unseen hand of fate, transformed Crovax into a vampire. His thirst for blood, a constant reminder of his transgression, became a shackle that mirrored the one he had broken for Selenia. The once noble warrior now walked a solitary path, forever teetering on the precipice of monstrous hunger and a soul-crushing despair. Even in the abyss there flickered a spark of something akin to redemption. Years later, Selenia, once again a pawn in the machinations of Yawgmoth, the Phyrexian overlord, was reborn. This new iteration was a pale imitation of her former self, a puppet animated by dark magic. She served as a twisted reward for Crovax, a fleeting solace dangled before him after he completed his assigned tasks and offered supplications to Yawgmoth. Their final encounter was a spectral echo of their passionate past. Crovax, driven by a morbid curiosity and a sliver of hope that defied all logic, confronted the simulacrum of Selenia. The battle, a one-sided affair, culminated in Crovax driving a stake through the heart of the puppet. As it crumbled to dust, a sense of terrible finality washed over him. But in that moment of despair, a curious thing happened. The spirit of Selenia, finally free from the Phyrexian taint, emerged from the wreckage. Her form, no longer corrupted by dark magic, shimmered with an ethereal luminescence. In a gesture that transcended words, she beckoned Crovax towards a blinding light, a doorway to the unknown. Tears for the first time in decades welled up in Crovax's eyes. Was this forgiveness, a chance at redemption, or simply a cruel illusion conjured by a dying mind? The answer remained shrouded in mystery. With a heavy heart, Crovax stepped through the portal, his fate entwined with the spirit of the woman he both loved and destroyed. Their story, a cautionary tale of love, betrayal, and the corrupting influence of power, became a whispered legend amongst the planeswalkers who traversed the multiverse. It served as a stark reminder that even the purest of intentions could be twisted by fate, and that even in the darkest corners of the cosmos, a flicker of redemption could sometimes pierce through the abyss.